Welcome to Focus Today. We have a very special guest today, and perhaps you've caught him on Fox News or read him in the Wall Street Journal. We have Dr. Jim Henderson with us, and he has authored a book that is fascinating, and a couple of books actually. And he has a unique relationship with a gentleman by the name of Matt Casper. And we're going to talk to him about his relationship with Matt, and of course, his books, which are really interesting. The first one was Jim and Casper Go to Church, and which is a fascinating book in itself. And then his latest book, Saving Casper. And we're going to talk to him because Casper is an atheist, and how Jim and Matt got together. So, Jim, I'm really sorry we couldn't get the Skype to work. How are you today, my friend?
I'm great, and I appreciate the opportunity. I apologize for not being more technically adept to pull it off. But
hey,
anyway,
not a problem.
Hey, when it's free, you get what you pay for, right? I mean, so
yeah.
What can we complain about?
You know, when it works, it's great. When it doesn't, all of a sudden our life is upside down. But
exactly.
Again, thank you for your time. Fascinating work that you do, and thank you for what you do. So tell us about you and Matt. How'd you guys connect?
I became interested, I pastored for 25 years, and during that time, of course, became interested in evangelism, which was clearly a dilemma not only for Christians, but for non-Christians. So I started researching different ways of, basically I decided to go to the customers and ask them what they thought about our attempts to convert them, and just take a direct approach. And I had a number of ways that I talk about in the first book, Jim and Casper Go to Church. And so I eventually heard about an atheist that was selling a soul on eBay. This would have been about 5 years ago, I think. And so I got involved in the bidding and won, and then that's what led to the article in the Wall Street Journal. And then I was asked by George Barnett to write another book with an atheist where I go to church with them. So I met Matt Casper through a mutual friend in San Diego who knew of my work, and I said, I'm looking for an atheist who wants to write a book with me, about going to church. And so they got in touch, and I interviewed Matt. I said, "You're a real atheist?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you believe in Jesus?" He said, "I don't even believe he exists." I said, "Perfect. Let's go write a book."
That's fascinating. How would you describe your relationship today with him?
We're very close friends. We live in different cities, so we don't work together all the time. But we've, over the last 5 years, have had occasion to work on websites and travel and speak. And I tell people that if you really want to learn about somebody, either spend money or travel with them, and you quickly learn about people's character, and how they operate under pressure. So fortunately, we've grown closer and gone through life changes together. He's been through, his mother passed away, and different things that happen in life. And so the book, I decided I wanted to write about our relationship. So we kind of wrote about our project the first time, the vehicle that we used to sort of get some visibility, and the thing that was interesting that I thought Christians would be interested in. But then I wanted to write about a relationship, because I'm interested in helping Christians understand what happens when you have a relationship with somebody that you have differences with, beliefs, and they don't change in the right amount of time. What are your options then? So that's what the book's about. But functionally about my failure to convert Casper, and what do we do as an alternative then? And it's used to help Christians understand how God wants us to operate inside of that kind of tension.
Well, I commend you for this. Tell me, are there some general misconceptions that Christians may have about atheists, and therefore we don't know what to do when we meet one?
Yeah, and one thing is that the fact that we're talking about atheists is unique, because 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been even a subject of any visibility, because principally Madeleine Murray O'Hair was their spokesperson, and even atheists didn't like her that much, And so then her son got saved, I think, at one point. So anyway,
yeah.
So there's definitely an upswing in interest and curiosity in atheism, and it's probably more reflection in I don't mean this disparagingly, but in the church's, ability to influence young people, I think it's very important that we look at the trends, because many of these people, I'm thinking like upwards of 80%, were raised in church.
Right.
And have had it, and we had a shot at them. And so you can make all the excuses you want. But so some of the reason they pick on Christians is because we're the biggest thing in the pond. We're pretty much all they know about. And so I think misconceptions are that they're hedonistic, immoral. They don't have character. It's not possible. They don't have meaning in life. All of those things are. I mean, I'm certain it's true for some atheists, but it's not. To generalize. In other words, if you have a friend who says they're an atheist and you go, "Oh my God, the person's a Satan worshiper now," or something,
right.
You immediately, get off on the wrong foot, because it's like, so it's like a person coming to you and saying you're a Christian, therefore you must be bigoted, hypocritical, and mean.
Yeah, right.
And so we have a perception in the marketplace as well. So I think it's best to go in with a clean slate and go, this is a person who's trying to make meaning out of life. How can I connect with them?
Did Casper become an atheist? I mean, were you able to figure out how this belief system came about with him?
Well, it's a great question, because we generally think there's like an epiphany that people have, they get really mad at God one day and they say, I'm an atheist now,
Yeah.
So typically what happens is it's not unlike, I don't know if most Christians recognize this, but most Christians become Christians slowly, not fast. That means if you interview people, which I've done a lot of, you find out it took years and months with several relapses before they kind of locked on to Jesus and like, oh, I really mean it. Mm-hmm. And that's how people even become atheists. Oftentimes it's quite slow. It just dawns on them. And it happens a lot when they're young, and they're just trying to make meaning out of, things that are confusing, like why do bad things happen to good people? And either there's nobody to talk to them, or oftentimes they get the argument immediately, and when you go in and you try and take apart a person's attempt to make meaning out of something that we all call confusing, and you just tell them not to think that way, that's not a great argument. Especially many atheists are quite bright, and they're intellectual, and so that's their attraction to science and the rational side and all that. Then there's a whole group of atheists that are more humanist. They really just think, I don't really care, why don't we just treat each other more respectfully?
Well, what's so interesting about this, Jim, is that you, when you guys decided to do this, you came together, so there's this presupposition already on the table. You believe in a God and he doesn't. So how did you start the dialogue, or which way did you make this thing go?
Well, I hired him. I said, I need you to do me a favor. I need a partner, because I'm trying to get through to Christians and help them learn how to be normal. I'm trying to help them learn. So would you please be my partner in this and tell me, I want to know without any holds barred exactly what you're seeing and what you think about what we're both looking at, the same set of circumstances. So it's a partnership. I never tried to convert him. I mean, when I say that, I mean, I'm very interested in people convert following Jesus.
Right.
But so I'm not what's the word? Neutral about that.
So what were you looking for?
I was looking for what Jesus talked about in Luke 16 when he talked about the shrewd manager, somebody that would help me take a look at the world from a pragmatic view, without rose-colored glasses and without people telling me what not to see. And so I wanted to see things, and I want to write about that so that Christians, so we know exactly what we're dealing with. Because if we really mean we're on the most important mission in the world, why would we not want more information? Why would we not go to the people that are perceived as our harshest critics and say, tell me exactly what you're seeing? Because if I can take that, I can take anything, right? I can take anything. I can work my way back down the food chain if people are just sort of like not even thinking about it. I mean, the biggest challenge to faith is indifference.
Yeah, right.
It's not difference. It's indifference.
Right.
And believe me, there's many deconverted Christians who are indifferent now to the gospel and to Jesus because we bored them to death.
Boy, that truth hurts.
Sorry for talking like that.
That's spot on. Well, you know, so often when we meet people that don't believe the way we do, we miss an opportunity to emotionally connect. We want to intellectually connect, and that always ricochets. Are you looking, or have you looked for a way to emotionally connect with Casper?
Oh yeah, I love Casper. He's my friend. I mean, we did an interview, and the woman asked a surprising question. You know, what's the most important thing what's the most surprising thing that happened to you? And I said, I didn't expect to love this person. I didn't expect him to become my friend. I care about him, and so more than anything, he's my friend. And
does he believe that? Does he believe that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I wish we could have worked it out. Yeah, and he'd be great to have on the show. Besides me, honestly, just independent of me, he's articulate and funny. And when we're actually we're trying to do a series of shows now called Help Me Save Casper, where I'm thinking about getting on college campuses where I essentially say, look, I tried to save him, I failed, why don't you take a shot at it? And we do this in a live audience. And so people simply give us their questions and their pitch, and Casper, takes them on. And the difference is we don't argue with people. We listen, we dialogue with people. We have very funny and interesting public conversations.
Wow.
So he's very good at that.
I wish I had you for about 2 hours. Let me just ask you one other quick question. We got to go, but you said his mother passed away.
Yeah.
What was that somewhat of a door opener for you to talk to him about eternity?
Well, great question. We covered that in the book. There's a chapter called "When Bad Things Happen to Damn People," and so that was a chapter he writes about his mother passing. And a couple things happened. His mother actually converted to Catholicism later in life and ended up dying in the home of some people in her parish that took care of her. So Casper, when he went to see his mom, was surrounded by a bunch of Catholic Christians who were very kind to him, and he was very impressed by that.
Wow.
The second thing is that he would probably say he anticipated that I would say something to him about this, and I chose to say nothing because he's my friend.
Yeah.
And then he writes about that. He writes about why Christians go after low-hanging fruit. But see, I practice something Sun Tzu says: when you're near, make them think you're far away.
Yeah.
And so, that's how I engaged with him, because he was my friend. He wasn't a target, so I wasn't going to leverage him at that point.
Well, Jim, thank you. I'm going to have you back, and maybe if we can, get Matt on too. It's called Saving Casper, a Christian and an Atheist Talk About Caring versus Scaring Evangelism. There's a picture of it on the screen for those watching on the Dove TV. Encourage you to check it out at the bookstores. Thanks, Jim. Blessings to you. Merry Christmas, my friend.
You too. Thanks so much.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at the Dove TV. Did you know that when you support the Dove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back, and coming up next, our own Steve Johnson had a chance to talk to David Maines. Now, he's the Executive Director of Mainstay Ministries, and they talk about the perspective and of what's happening with Christian persecution in Nigeria. Now, we know that Christian persecution is going on all over the world, and we have many brothers and sisters who are really suffering and losing their lives, quite frankly, for their faith. And I hope we never forget them and pray for them and do what we can to help them. But I think you'll find this conversation to be pretty inspiring. So let's join Steve Johnson and David Maines.
Dr. Maines, it's great to be able to have you with us, especially since a lot of our listeners and viewers may be familiar with you being on the Chapel of the Air for several decades and your 50-day spiritual adventure, which when I read that, I thought, boy, I remember when that was all happening so often every year, and a lot of our listeners and viewers were a part of that. So I want to talk now about kind of the new era that you are in with your ministry and Mainstay Ministries and Nigeria. Now, we've had an individual who's a friend of theDove who's gone over to try to build a Bible school there, so we've heard a little bit about it. But tell us what is happening in Nigeria and how you got involved in that.
Okay, let me give you just a little background on Nigeria, because sometimes people hear the word and don't know where it is. It's West Africa. It's the 7th largest country in the world, which is surprising to people. It's even bigger population-wise than Russia. The biggest city is Lagos, which is right on the sea, and that's about 11 million people. I'm from Chicago, and when I think 11 million, that is really large. The country speaks English, so it's relatively easy to get around in Nigeria, at least in the southern part. When you go into the north, you get into some tribal languages, which is the area where I went to. You have to understand Nigeria as being about 50-50 Christian, Muslim, and they have lived together for many years. The north is more Muslim, the south is more Christian. Recently, a group called Boko Haram, which is a militant Muslim group, has said they would like to make the northern part, and they demand that they make the northern part of Nigeria under Sharia law, and they have said all people who don't convert or agree, you need to go or we will kill you, and they have been true to their word. So there have been about 2,000 now recorded Christian deaths, and those are not quiet deaths, those are shot or slaughtered. I was there in Nigeria in November. Just about a month before that, there were 26 students pulled out of a given university in the north. They were brought out. They were all Christian. If you listen to BBC, CNN, they talk about what happens, but they don't say these are all Christians necessarily. And each one of them was shot in the head or their throats were cut. So it is a grisly thing that is going on. Two ways you have to understand what is there to get a picture of it in your mind. One is that churches are attacked. Quite often, it's done during worship services. They are set on fire as people flee. They are shot. There'll be 40, 50 of these Boko Haram people there who will try to kill them. Churches, they're not large churches. Churches have tried to post guards, sometimes 2, 3 guards, but they're just shot quickly, overcome, and then the work is done. Then they also go into villages. Sometimes they're Christian villages. Sometimes if you get a little bit larger, it's a mixed group of Muslim Christian. And these people, again, they've lived together, but they will go in and just begin to pick out the Christian homes and kill these people, shoot them. When I heard this first from Dio Obawiya, who is the director for medical ambassadors for 17 countries, he lives in Nigeria, I said, I can't imagine what you're talking about, Dio. I had never heard of any of these things. And when he talked more, I said, this has to be made aware to the churches in North America what is going on, so people can pray and they can give to these people who have lost everything. And somewhere we got to get this recorded more. Well, my background, as you said, is radio and television. I won awards in that area, and I kind of pushed the board of medical ambassadors, and eventually it ended up with me going over. And I'm 76 years old, which is pretty old to make not only the trip, but go up into some of those areas. Fortunately, it was not scary for me at all, but we were able to bring to where we were survivors of what has happened and then record their stories in a documentary. For example, I'm thinking of one pastor. His name was Pastor John. When they came into his village, he heard the gunshots. He called to his family. He had 6 kids and then his wife. And for whatever reason, they ran to the house, and he tried to get them to come with him. They run to the bush and hide. And they didn't. They stayed in the house. And when the Boko Haram came, they knew they were in the house. They just poured gasoline around the house. When I say house, it's not like my house or your house probably. It's kind of in between a hut and our houses. And they just poured gasoline around, set him on fire, and he lost all of his family. And he came, it took him 2 days to get to where we were so we could record his testimony. And he gave it a very, he doesn't speak English well, but he gave it in English. And when he was all done, I said, thank you. He just touched me deeply. And I said, thank you so much. And he said, no, I thank you. I said, why would you thank me after all you've gone through? He said, nobody knows and you're listening to me tell my story. And so that's what I did. I recorded the stories of these people. Then I tried to weave it around the ministry of Dio Obawiya, who again is just a prince of a man, and he has been in a position that's very difficult because he's received death threats. And he knows, and when I talk to him, he says, I maybe have 3 years to live if I'm fortunate, but my life is in the hands of the Lord and such. So that's the background. Does that help you?
Yeah, it does. So your interest in this really came just by finding out there was a problem and investigating it a little bit further. Is that right?
Finding out there's a problem and a very dear personal friend involved. Because Dio has a family, a wife, and I'm concerned for him, and I wanted to pray for him. I pray for him every day, and I think having been there, I can pray far more intelligently. And then also these people whose lives have been absolutely shattered. I mean, this pastor lost his kids, he lost his wife, he lost his home, he lost his clothes, he lost his job, he lost his property, he lost everything. And what does he do? He wanders until he finds someone who can be of help to him, which is the role that Dio is in. But he has so many of these people now. He says, wow, how do I care for them all? I give them clothes, I give them food that I have, I give them money. I don't have a lot of money. And he says, somewhere the church in other parts of the world has to know what's going on and come to our help, because we need you desperately now. So that's what motivated me.
How long was your interview on camera with Dio Obawiya?
We interviewed, there was an enclosed compound. There's a certain danger once you come with cameras and such. I went in with just one videographer and one sound man. And smaller cameras, there were places in the documentary we've done that I didn't get to, but some incredibly brave Nigerian videographers went there and got footage for us. The whole of when I interviewed him took it was late in the afternoon when we did that. It was easy to do because I know him very well, and I said, I don't just want to do a video of statistics and dead bodies. I need somehow for people to identify with a given person so that they can say, these are real people like us, and these are attractive people. So he became the dominant personality in the interview, but at the same time, there were other interviewees who came in from different places that we met.
What I'd like to do is air just a brief clip of this interview that took place so you kind of get a feel. So here's Dr. David Mains talking to Dio Obawiya at that compound that is fairly dangerous. This is just about a 1.5-minute clip. Let's air that.
You never thought about violence against Christians when you committed your life to Christ or when you became a leader in the cause of Christ. Would you like to go back and say, if I had known this, I wouldn't have followed you, Jesus?
Well, this is the first time that we are facing this violence in this dimension. This is a huge one. And if I had known that this kind of problem would be there before I became a Christian, I would have had a second thought, especially when I look at the response of the church to the present state of the situation. I think I would reconsider being a Christian. But now that I'm a Christian, I think it's a price that we have to pay to defend our faith. The people that preach to me never talk to me about violence, but looking through the scriptures now, looking at the way the disciples were martyred, and looking at the experience of our Lord Jesus Christ, I think it's a price that is worth paying. Now I've come to live with the reality that I really have to count the costs, and I really have to carry my cross and follow. And so these things that are happening is a confirmation of the predictions in the scriptures and things that have been happening. But I have a hope, and the hope is that I'll see the Lord after paying this price. So I think it's worth it.
You know, that is just a snapshot of a pretty telling interview you had there. You can certainly grasp the feeling that he has of saying, there's danger all around here, here's where my faith lies. What is going to be done with all these interviews to alert people to the problems in Nigeria that we just heard?
Well, I'm hoping that people will get a copy of the DVD. They can do that by going to medicalambassadors.org. That's the homepage, medicalambassadors.org, and then if they click on the Nigerian thing, it tells them how they can get a free DVD. And I'm hoping that people will not only watch it, but they will say to their Sunday school class or their small group or their missional community or their men's group or women's group, whatever, watch this with me. And what I want people to do is to be generous with these people who have lost everything. And then I also want them to pray for what's going on in Nigeria. And I tried in that interview, I don't know if you've seen it all, Steve, or not, but I tried in that interview to help people know how to pray, not only for those who are persecuted, but for the persecutors as well. Because I don't want to make this a Muslim-Christian fighting type of thing. They've been together in Nigeria many years. It's an unfortunate thing, but the truth is that God loves those militants as much as he loves you or he loves me. And so we have to pray for them as well. And God's doing a work in a lot of those people's lives, the dreams and visions that people are having, and they're affected by what they're doing. So I'm just praying that the evil will turn into good because of the rallying of God's people around the country.
What is the next step for you? Are you going to be going back to Nigeria, do you think?
I don't think I'll be allowed to go back in again, especially if the video gets wide exposure. Dio was kind of in a difficult position because the more exposure he gets, the more his life is in danger. Did you see Zero Dark 30, the film that was up for Academy Award?
Yeah, I know about it, sure.
Okay, well, in that, Jessica Chastain, she plays the role of the woman who finds out where Osama bin Laden is. And at the end of that film, two men try to assassinate her when she drives out of her compound in Pakistan, and they just unload with automatic rifles at her. Now, there was bulletproof glass in the car and the reinforced steel, and she jams it in reverse and goes back in, puts the garage door down, and so she's saved. But as soon as that happens, the State Department says, you come back home. You have to leave Pakistan and come back to Washington, D.C., because once you're on the hit list, the only way you get off is that you get killed. Well, if you can understand that from the secular video that was done, which is the reality the United States government knows in terms of militant Muslim groups, that's the position Dio is in. So as you watch him, he is a marked, I have a hard time saying it because I care deeply for him.
Yeah.
He's a marked man. And he's staying there with his family and with his wife. And so he's in a difficult spot, very difficult spot. And as are all Christians, your heart goes out when you watch it. You see the testimony. Some of them are very simple farm people talk about what has happened up in the north. But yeah, it's a tough road. It's not the only place where Christians are in danger serving the Lord. The whole of medical ambassadors, there are 4 or 5 of these different huge regional leaders who are in the very same situation. Yeah. And what they say is this is the start of what is going to happen all around the world. We're the first fruits of the martyrs. And
wow.
That may be true, who knows? Well,
I'll tell you what, this is a great, for people who are just getting introduced to this for the first time, this is a great beginning to see that video. And medicalambassadors.org, the place they can go, right?
Yes, right.
Dr. Baines, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for giving me the time.
Grab yours. All right. Thank you, Steve. What an interesting interview. Hey, I got a question for you. Was Jesus the first century rabbi? Well, there's a book about it, and we're going to talk to the author, Rabbi David Zaslow, coming up next year on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market. But at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. It's been way, way overdue for us to have my good friend in the studio with us, Rabbi David Zaslow from Ashland. And I consider him a dear friend. We go way back. I think we met, had to be back about 83.
It was.
And friends ever since. And I'm just really honored to have him. He's authored a book that's just out. It's called Jesus, the First Century Rabbi. And you may want to check this book out. I understand it's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online at christianbooks.com. You may want to go to Evangel or Christian Discount Books in Jacksonville and order it because it's just out. And I think you'll find this to be a fascinating read. Well, David, nice to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Perry. It's great to be here. Really great to be here.
You look great.
You look great. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to look like you when I get 29.
Grow your beard.
Well, what made you decide to do this? I mean, you kind of went right at the heart of the issue, didn't you?
I try to, because, you know, over the decades, you know, you and I have discussed the sad separation between church and synagogue, and the misunderstandings between Judaism and Christianity. And I always getting questions from Christian friends, well-meaning Christian friends that are a little bit naive about Judaism. And then I get questions from Jewish people, from my own congregants, that are very naive about Christianity. And what I wanted to do is lessen the surface tension between our two faiths. I'm not trying to say it's the same religion. It's uniquely different religions with uniquely different callings from God, uniquely different covenants, but both aimed at the same goal, is making this world a better place. And so to lessen the surface tension, I needed to answer questions to both Jews and Christians about what our faith is supposed to do.
Is it a stretch for you within the confines of your belief system and those that you traffic with to call Jesus a rabbi?
Absolutely not. The term rabbi in Jesus' day was not an ordination process through a seminary. That didn't come till the 2nd century or so, or after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. But the word rabbi meant teacher, and his name was, his title would have been rabbi as a polite term of somebody who's a teacher. And Jesus, of course, his name in Hebrew would be Yehoshua or Yeshua, which means, would it be translated into English as Joshua. And his mother Mary was actually Miriam. So they were a very, very Jewish family. And so it's not a stretch at all to call him Rabbi Joshua or Rabbi Yehoshua or Rabbi Jesus.
All right, so who did you write the book for?
You know something, that's a great question. I wrote this in the introduction. I wasn't sure who to write it for. I was sort of writing it for God and saying, God, you deliver it to who needs to read this book. My focus really, seriously, was Christians and Jews primarily, but secular scholars, non-Christians, non-Jews, who are interested in the historical Jesus. That's the key in the book, is the distinction between the theological Jesus of the church and the Jesus of history.
Did you learn anything writing this book?
I learned an enormous amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Such as?
Well, I think I had for too long a defensive position that...
From a Jewish perspective.
From a Jewish perspective.
Right.
A defensive position that Christianity was the branch, speaking to the root, but sometimes not even knowing it had a root in natural Israel, in the olive tree of Israel. And I think I was taking a position of how much Judaism has given to Christianity. You know what I really learned from the book? Is also how much Christianity has given to Judaism. That there's been an exchange of theological concepts, that with each other we've strengthened each other. And many times theologians in both faiths do not acknowledge that, they do not do attribution of what they gained from each other.
It would seem to me, David, that Christians have a tendency to culturalize Jesus to the modern day. And I see how that could be easily done.
Sure.
But at the cost of his Judaism and his roots, so to speak, his Jewish roots. And so, did you see that in researching this?
Very much so. In fact, that is the primary focus of the book, is to restore the historic Jesus. The historic Jesus who celebrated Hanukkah, who actually didn't celebrate Christmas.
Okay, keep going.
the historic Jesus who lived as a Jew, his whole life, as a religious Jew, not apart from Judaism, but a part of Judaism. And so there's too many misunderstandings within the church that somehow he was the first Methodist or the first Presbyterian, rather than realizing that he was a religious Jew, part of a heritage of many other rabbis who were also trying to do a reformation, so to speak, within Judaism, to reform the
So
Judaism.
What do you want Christians to get out of this? I mean,
just simply that he really was Jewish, and that their roots, the Christian roots, are in Judaism. If they want to learn about congregational worship and the liturgy in the church, whether it's a liturgical church or non-liturgical church, come back to the root and study Judaism.
Okay, because out of that comes multiple arguments, as you can imagine. One is the history of the church, even as the liturgy is put together by various faiths. I think you will see from how you worship, there's even carryovers from that in your liturgy to the Catholics, to the Orthodox. I mean, you see all of that, and Jesus is kind of in the midst of that. But I think the average evangelical kind of doesn't bring that history forward.
Absolutely not. And that's the goal of the book, is that the theological Jesus belongs to the church. The historic Jesus belongs to the world. Understanding who he was as a Jewish man puts history back in context. So when the Passion story is being told on Good Friday, it's being told in its proper historic context, that Jesus was one of many rabbis trying to do a reformation within Judaism, and that small band of Jews that were against Jesus' teachings were also against the other rabbis as well. So once you bring that into context, then the history of anti-Semitism starts to dissipate, and the surface tension between our faiths can lessen, and we can begin having really good dialogue, even where we disagree.
I can see where the Christian faith would say, you didn't go far enough, and where the Jewish faith would say, you went too far.
You know something? That's exactly the dilemma that I hope the book will raise. I hope the dialogue will come within my community, the Jewish community, say, you've gone too far. And I'm saying to the Jewish community, all I've done is try to bring Jesus back as a historic figure, as a rabbi, as a rebbe, as a teacher, as a native son of ancient Judea. Now, to a Christian, they'll say to me, you're not going far enough. That's not enough. He can never just be a great rabbi. And I'll say to the Christian, you're right. For you, he needs to be the Son of God, who is the incarnation of God, who died and was resurrected for your sins. That's the theological basis of Christianity. So can we live with each other's definitions of Jesus? Theological Jesus for Christians, historic Jesus for Jews. Now, the answer is that it makes it tough. Right, exactly.
Okay. Cool us down a little bit. Let me take a quick break. Rabbi David Zaslow with us. His new book is entitled Jesus, the First Century Rabbi. You may want to get this. Take a look at it. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and my special guest today is Rabbi David Zaslow and his new book, just out. I mean, this is hot off the press, and it's a hot book. Jesus, First Century Rabbi. And let me encourage you to check it out. You can probably check it out at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, ChristianBooks.com, and you may want to go to Evangel or Christian Discount Books and order it and ask them to get you a copy. Just Out by David Zaslow. By the way, the name of your synagogue in Ashland is?
Havurah Synagogue.
Okay, Havurah Synagogue in Ashland. And you got a website?
I do, yeah, rabbidavidzaslow.com.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fascinating discussion, and he and I have been friends for years, and I really love this man. At what point? I mean, you're bringing Jesus further than the Jews want you to bring him. You're not bringing him far enough as the Christians want you to bring him. So I get that point. At what point does the Jewish community stop Jesus in their theology and in their history and bringing him forward? At what point do they say that's enough of him?
It's not that, the Jewish community has rarely looked at Jesus because of the anti-Semitism that went on in Europe for 1,000 years,
right.
More than 1,000 years. It was too painful for us to look at Jesus because the way the gospel was presented to us was with Constantine's sword. The cross was turned into a sword. When we hear the word crusades, I told a friend of mine who is a leader in the Campus Crusades for Christ, I said, that's not a good term for Jewish people because the crusades were aimed at converting us.
Right.
So the point is we don't much look at Jesus. And so for the first time in history, in this era, with the reconciliation after Vatican II and after the evangelicals, after 67, started really taking a look at the root and branch and the connection between Israel and the church, we're beginning to have this dialogue. This is all very, very new. So for the first time, for example, my book is based upon the work of academic Jewish scholars who are committed both to their Judaism and to historic scholarship. So this is not a lot of my opinions, because my opinions are not worth that much. What I try to do is compile the best scholars in the country, mostly Jewish. And
so is there a move, David, among Jewish scholars to find this ground with Christians to have some kind of a relationship?
I believe so. I think, though, the relationship is based upon mutual respect, not necessarily full agreement.
Yeah, well, that'll probably not happen.
Well, what can happen is the dialogue, just like what we're having. The dialogue is as important as coming to... See, in Judaism, mystery is important. Paradox is important. We don't have to have the answer. In Judaism, the question sometimes is more important than having the answer.
Right.
And so, for example, one of the top scholars in the country in this work is Amy Jill Levine, and she wrote a book called The Misunderstood Jew. It's something I recommend to every Christian and every Jewish person to read, to understand the distinction between the theological Jesus, who belongs to the church, and the historical Jesus that really belongs to everybody. So as we start to reclaim Jesus historically, it's right, for a Christian it's not enough. It shouldn't be enough.
Right.
But can we live with that paradox? Can we live with the mystery that for the Jews, the most we can ever reclaim Jesus is as a rabbi, as a native son of Judea, and for Christians it's not going to be enough, and I say that's okay.
Fascinating, because I am surprised, and I don't know if your research brought this out, but I am really surprised of a growing recognition, maybe is the best way to explain it, of anti-Semitism even among Christians. It almost seems to be a little bit on the rise, and I'm going, what's this all about? I mean, why? Did you see any of that in your research?
I've seen it historically. It's not only just, it's not just the rise of it. It's always been there because of the terrible mistranslations and misinterpretations of the Christian scriptures by sometimes well-meaning priests and pastors who will take the Passion story out of context and really blame the Jews for the crucifixion, the concept of deicide.
I mean, they call you Jesus killers, right?
They call us Christ killers. And the idea that the Jews killed Jesus. And the idea, well, even if the Jews didn't kill Jesus, they handed him over to the Romans to kill. They don't understand that a trial by night is impossible within Judaism. That the reason they probably had a trial by night is because the people who were students of Jesus, who were followers of Jesus, would have had a riot. And who were those students? They weren't Catholics. They weren't Methodists. They were Jews. So his followers were Jews. His teachings were thoroughly, thoroughly Jewish. And once that history becomes reclaimed, then terms that you read in the Christian scriptures, the Jews said to Pilate, his blood be upon us and our children, become impossible to live with. In other words, the Jews, meaning all the Jews, or just 40 Jews, or 20 Jews. And so Christianity needs to take a look at that.
Do you think any of the words of Jesus as found in the Gospels are acceptable by Jews?
That's a great question in the book. What I've tried to do is to actually show that everything that's in red letters in the Christian scriptures is rooted within Judaism. That I took the entire Our Father prayer, the entire Beatitudes, and I've redacted them or brought them back to their Jewish roots. That when he spoke the Sermon on the Mount, the Jews went, wow, we get it. In other words, it was so natural to the Jewish people to hear his words. It wasn't revolutionary teaching. It was a revolutionary presentation of Jewish teachings. He was very rooted. He had colleagues who were Jewish who are not necessarily written about in the Christian scriptures. He had teachers before him. The Golden Rule was actually taught by Hillel in the generation just preceding Jesus. So everything Jesus was teaching was rooted in Jewish thought. And that's what I bring back in the book.
Okay, so you're bringing those forward. Do you think they'll be accepted?
I think they will be accepted because it's not me bringing them forward. You know, it's really top-notch Christian and Jewish scholars who are in great academies who are serious about their Christianity and serious about their Judaism, saying, yeah, he really said this. Dr. Brad Young will confirm this. Dr. David Flusser will confirm this. Dr. Amy Jill Levine will confirm this, that these were actually his teachings and actually rooted in Judaism.
So are you in trouble with colleagues of trying to bring Jesus, Rabbi Jesus, a little higher up in recognition?
Well,
I mean, you can't ignore his words, can you?
You know, we haven't had major reviews yet.
Okay.
But we'll see what's going to happen. I'm not concerned in a bad way. I want the dialogue between evangelical Christians, mainstream Christians, traditional Jews, Jews of all brands, Christians of all brands, to have this dialogue together. So am I in trouble yet? Not yet, but we'll see what's going to happen.
There are as many factions in Judaism as there is in Christianity, and I think we don't see that. We see you,
right.
No matter what your factions are, there is this tradition that you hold together no matter what. At the end of the day, you got each other's backside.
Well, we do. We're a small religion. Look, there's only 14 million Jews in the world, 2 billion Christians in the world. So we have a lot of factionalism. We have a lot of disagreements. You saw this in the first century. Look, Jesus is teaching to the factionalism that was going on in ancient Judea. You had the Sadducees, and you had the Pharisees, and you had the Essenes, and you had the Zealots. You had different sects, and they were squabbling with each other just like Jews squabble with each other today.
How do Jews handle the crucifixion?
Well, we see the suffering of Jesus in its historic context. When I say we, I should be careful.
Yeah.
Many Jews who study
Okay.
first century
All right.
see that his crucifixion in its full historic context. Josephus reports that 50 to 100,000 Jews were crucified, that the streets of Jerusalem on any given day were lined with crucifixes. So we don't see Jesus' death as exclusive. We see his death as inclusive of all the suffering that went on in that first century by the Roman occupation. So we see his death as a vicarious or substitutionary atonement in the same way we see the suffering of any human being as a vicarious or substitutionary atonement.
Then that would transport us to the resurrection.
It would, yes.
And how do you handle that?
Well, first of all, the way Christians understand the resurrection is a little bit different at times than the way Jews understand the resurrection. So we understand it both allegorically. In other words, there are dead places in ourselves that need to be resurrected. Paul spoke about that. He spoke about partaking in the resurrection. And certainly the idea of the resurrection, we call it michayei hametim, the rising of life coming out of death, is certainly a very, very Jewish concept. Mediation is a Jewish concept. Even the concept of Trinity is a Jewish concept. When you see the roots of Christianity in Judaism, then suddenly we don't necessarily agree totally on all theological issues, but the surface tension is lessened. And just like you and I, we have a good friendship and a good relationship, and we can even agree to disagree, and it doesn't bother our friendship at all.
I'm just curious, how do you explain the Trinity?
Well, in Judaism we have an idea of God, Torah, and Israel.
Oh.
And we have a great book called the Zohar that says those three are all one. So the idea of God is like the Father. Torah is kind of like this, the intermediary, the logo, what's called by in the book of John. So we don't think of a Trinity in the same sense as Christians do, but we have sort of a triad of God, Torah, and Israel. On Saturday morning, on our Sabbath, if you come to a synagogue, you'll see when the Torah is taken out, the congregation rises. And when it's brought around the community, we touch it and give it a kiss. We revere, we go to God through the Torah.
Fascinating. The book is entitled Jesus, the First Century Rabbi by Rabbi David Zaslow, and it's just now out. Check it out at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, ChristianBooks.com, and maybe the local Christian bookstore just may want to ask them to order it. It's put out by Paraclete Press when you're ordering it. All right, I only got about a minute and a half left. You say in the book that Judaism and Christianity need each other. Explain that.
I believe so. You know, one covenant in Judaism does not replace another covenant. You have a covenant in Eden, you have a covenant of Noah, you have a covenant of King David, of the Mosaic covenant. They don't replace each other, they connect and add on to each other, like in legal terms, a codicil. So the idea that the New Testament, the New Covenant, replaces the Old Covenant, I think is incorrect. I think that God has a specific purpose for the church, and God has an ongoing eternal covenant and a specific purpose for Judaism, and that we each have our roles. And God says to Judaism, you do this, be an or hagoyim, be a light unto the nations, and to Christianity, you bring this good news to the whole world. So Judaism is meant to be a small religion. Christianity is meant to be a large, broad religion. And in that way, we need each other. We learn from each other. And if you take a look at history, we've learned more from each other than either religion acknowledges. I think it's time to acknowledge that and to thank each other.
That's beautifully said. The other part of that is that you're openly acknowledging the New Testament.
Absolutely. The Christian scriptures are really an extension of the Jewish scriptures. Now, I don't necessarily use the word New Testament.
Are you in trouble for saying that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I love the term Elder Testament and Younger Testament.
Okay.
That's what my Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi uses. And
really?
It lessens the tension. Old Testament, New Testament is a little pejorative.
Yeah.
Elder Testament, Younger Testament, it kind of makes us laugh, and we need to laugh a little more.
All right. Rabbi David Zaslow, thank you, buddy. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to see you, too.
I love you.
God bless you. Thank you.
And shalom, I guess we say here.
Yeah.
And it's called Jesus, the First Century Rabbi. Check it out. Put out by Paraclete Press. Order one today, and then write him a review. Send him a little
Please
review.
do, yes.
Okay. DavidZaslow.com. All right, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at the Dove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.